So one thing you will always have an abundance of when it comes to horror films are copycats. And with the success of Alien and the follow-up Aliens, there were more than a few movies that were hoping to draft off of the renewed interest in creature features. Now, the 1989 film Leviathan stood out from the rest of them primarily because of the stellar cast that the story brought to us and the fact that they were taking the terror from the stars and plunging it deep into the sea. Now, what with that could possibly go wrong? So you want to talk about a group of all-stars. I mean, in this film alone, we have RoboCop, we have the Ghostbuster that none of the kids wanted to be in Stranger Things. We've got one of the wet bandits from Home Alone. And we also have Rambo's most trusted brother-in-arms throughout that series of movies. I mean, by the end of this thing, I got a feeling all these characters would be hoping for their alter ego's artillery. And additionally, the creature effects were done here by Stan Winston of Jurassic Park fame. So we're starting off hot with this one. There's a lot of things they're getting right before we've even seen the first frame. Now, the credits take us through an underwater journey in the Atlantic Ocean, 16,000 feet beneath the surface, and we see a mining company that is looking for silver. They're drilling for other precious metals. And the crew themselves, they have these memorable dive suits, and they're all designated with a number as sort of a call sign. And the suits look so good, it just feels like that they're going to play some sort of a role in the end of this movie, sort of like what they did with Ripley and the loader in Aliens, how that thing came back. I think we're going to see these suits again. Now, the quick side note, the first time I ever saw Leviathan, I really thought I was watching The Abyss. Similar, but different. Way different. And the movie's off to a tense start because they're in the water and one of the divers is having a problem with his suit. The oxygen levels are uncharacteristically low, and because of this, he's having a panic attack. Now, there's no doctor there during this dive, even though there's supposed to be one. It's mandated in the Union Code, as Cobb would later remind us, but Peter Weller plays Beck, and he's in charge. He's a geologist that the company hired to send down there to find as much precious metal as they could possibly dig up, and he's panicking because he's never been in this situation before. He doesn't know what to do. Everything winds up okay. The gentleman having the panic attack is named DeJesus. He's actually a really good character here. He's okay. He survives, but nobody trusts or believes in Beck because he's not really one of the team. He's just been put there to oversee everything. And he wants to be accepted. You see him reading a book on managing people. I mean, if anybody's ever had to sit through reading one of those books, you want to be accepted. You want to be part of the process because those books are dry and just awful. That being said, he tries to curry favor with the group by offering them a day off. I mean, he's really putting forth the effort here. And Peter Weller's good in this movie. So along with Beck, you've also got another really solid crew of characters here in this movie. Six-Pack is played by Daniel Stern. He's our lecherous hornball of the group. You know, every group's got to have one of those. DeJesus, we talked about a little bit ago with the faulty suit. He's sort of a dreamer. He wants to be off somewhere skiing as soon as this project is over with. Bowman is our ginger. She's our stock expert, and she is also one of the objects of Six-Pack's affection. Cobb is the by-the-book union man, and our doctor would rather be off somewhere playing golf than stuck down there with the rest of them. It's a great cast. They all work really well together, and they're all very distinctive. They feel different. And when they're on the screen, you enjoy seeing them. You enjoy the interactions. I thought it was really one of the brightest, if not the best part of this film. Now, there's a prank involving a sea spider that Six-Pack finds when they're diving, and he brings it up, hides it in his suit, and when Williams, who is the young woman who's also training to be an astronaut, so she wants to go from one end of things to the other, she's working on the suit, and this spider winds up popping out at her. Now, it made me sigh and roll my eyes a little bit because the spider looks like a facehugger from Aliens. So when I'm watching this movie, I'm thinking, man, please don't be trying to rip off Alien completely because we've seen so many of those over the course of time. But Williams gets him back, puts the thing under his pillow, and there's a big brouhaha over it. Six-Pack is not happy. Williams stands her ground, and Beck ultimately has to give both of them seed detail for the infraction. It's during this detail, when it's just Williams and Six-Pack, that they both happen upon a downed Russian ship named Leviathan. The only way they know the name is the doctor happens to be able to read Russian and about every other language you can possibly think of. And yay, buried treasure, right? They do find a safe. It's everything you've ever wanted when you're a little kid. I don't know how many times I went driving down the road, hoping in a ditch somewhere there was just a chest. And you know what's messed up? I didn't even want a chest of gold. When I was a kid, I wanted a chest of WWE magazines. It's sick, right? But everybody wants that buried treasure. Everybody wants to find a stockpile of things that they love. And they find a safe. They pillage through it. Six-Pack winds up pocketing a flask when nobody is looking, even though Bowman does see him, before they wind up pulling out a video of a captain's log explaining that he's got a full infirmary and they've got an infection that's spread throughout the ship that they just can't explain. They don't know where it came from. This is the captain saying this on the log, and this is the doctor translating it to Beck. Now, the bottle of vodka that they wind up finding in the safe, everybody's happy to see until Beck winds up confiscating it and locking it down in his cabin. So this reported outbreak on the ship that they just had two of their own people on really concerns the doc. Beck is not so much worried about it, but the doc thinks it's something to be aware of, something to be proactive about. And in the meantime, Bowman gets her hands on Beck's personnel file because the plan is they're going to go through it and they're going to try to figure out what the code on a safe would be based on what he has in his personnel file. Winds up being a social security number. They get the vodka out. Everybody looks to imbibe, and then they realize that Beck has replaced it in water. Nobody's happy about this, but you never know. He might have just saved their lives. Six-Pack is still in the mood to drink, so he goes into his bunk, hides in his bunk, gets out the flask, and goes to enjoy himself, but Bowman shows up because she saw him hide the flask, and she wants a shot of it herself. This right here, what happens here, winds up being one of the worst decisions anybody's made in a horror movie up until this point. They didn't know, but it was a bad idea. So Williams and Beck wind up taking a liking to one another. And for Williams, Six-Pack is propositioning her in the crudest of ways, probably 20 to 25 times per day. And you just know that she's looking for anybody else, another man to connect with on any sort of level. Because, I mean, let's face facts. They're 16,000 feet below sea. And Beck confesses to her he feels a little bit out of place amongst the crew, but she winds up comforting him and saying, "You're more like us than you probably even realize." Now, my opinion is they just want to bang, but you got to work your way up to something like that. A Six-Pack, on the other hand, after he's had his night of drinking, he winds up in medical because he's not feeling well. And at first, the doc just does chalk it up to a hangover, but then he runs a sample on some of the skin that's starting to peel up from Six-Pack's body, and he sees some weird mutation taking place, something he's never seen before. He ends up dying, though, Six-Pack does, because of this, basically that same day. And the doc explains to Beck that he feels like this is something he needs to examine the rest of the crew for, but he wants to prevent a panic from taking place. So they've got to figure out how to navigate that strategically. There's a chilling moment, though, because Williams and Jones help Bowman into medical after she's not feeling well. Because keep in mind, she took a drink of the same thing that Six-Pack had. And Jones sees Six-Pack laying in the next room, talks to him, but then, and we think Six-Pack's dead, but then we see moving under that sheet. So we don't know what's coming. I didn't know a whole lot about this movie when I sat down with it. And when I saw that, even during the rewatch, I had a hard time remembering where we were headed, what this creature was like. Bowman is a bad way at this point. I mean, she is really going through it and her hair starts to fall out. But it isn't until she decides to take a look at Six-Pack to see how he's doing that she sees pus coming out of Six-Pack's sores and then something moving around inside of his body. She's a smart woman, so she just knows whatever happened to him is eventually going to happen to her, so she decides to kill herself. She grabs a scalpel, gets in a shower, and slits her wrist. Now, the crew discovers her in that shower, but when we see them do that, we also see in the room that Six-Pack was in, we see something with tentacles. We see a shadow moving around. It does not look pleasant. Now, they dispose of both of these bodies because they put Bowman by Six-Pack, and the next time they go in that medical bay, they these bodies have somehow merged together. So they're trying to form into something, which is terrifying. And they wind up disposing of both of them out into the sea. Now, just before they can completely close that lock to jettison these things out into the water, part of it climbs back onto the ship, gets pinched off, and it winds up wiggling away. And then about 5 minutes later, whatever gets left on that ship, it almost gives birth to something else. Like, it looks like an eel crawls out of it. So what was one is now two, and we'll just have to see where that takes us. But then things start to line up. The people on the Russian ship, as it would turn out, were being experimented on, and this genetic mutation was some sort of virus they were putting in the vodka so they could get the crew to drink it and see what happens to them. So the crew not being able to, the current crew not being able to drink what they stole from Beck probably saved most of their lives for the time being. But it looks like they're starting to figure out what happened because the doctor's examining the footage of when they found this wreckage, and it looks like somebody sunk that boat on purpose, which tells us that whatever was on the boat, they didn't want it getting out. So the eel-looking creature that came out of the other creature, it winds up getting to Jesus when the poor guy's just trying to make himself a bowl of popcorn after his buddy was a dick to him and knocked over his puzzle and screwed up his whole day. Now this thing burrows into DeJesus' chest, eats through a thick metal door, and then goes on to drain the blood supply on the ship, because apparently that's how this thing feeds, is off of human blood. Now, to make matters worse, the doc decides he's going to launch all the escape pods because they're stuck down there because they're told that the surface is experiencing a hurricane. So obviously they cannot come up in the water when there's a hurricane going on. Now, they know that the pods probably are going to get ripped apart by this hurricane, but that's probably the more favorable option compared to what's going on down there on the ship. So the doc decides to get rid of all of them. Same principle. We can't let whatever this is get to the surface and infect everybody up there. Now, I understand the thinking here, but that is not what John Rambo would approve of at all. And I think this guy's going to have some explaining to do the next time he talks to Sly. Now, the ending of this movie completely tanks it for me, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it up until the ending. It wasn't any one thing. I just felt like it started to lean on tropes that had been done before in these sorts of movies. It's a little too formulaic for my taste. We really didn't get a good look at this monster up until the point that the survivors were going to have to use those suits that we talked about earlier and try to rise to the surface to get away from this whole thing, and then one of the monsters rips through it. It just kind of looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon with a few other things fused on him, like the faces of all the crew that it's basically consumed are somewhere on the body, which I thought was really strange. Kind of reminded me of what Freddy Krueger did in part 3 of Nightmare on Elm Street with the Dream Warriors, but the creature was a little underwhelming, especially considering the pedigree of the guy that created the whole thing. For me, this movie, it's a 6 out of 10. You know, it's worth watching. It's an experience, but I don't know that you'll ever want to watch it again. And I don't know that I'll ever watch it again, which is kind of a bummer because the cast was good. I thought it was a good story. The end was just so convoluted, and the reveal of the creature was just a letdown. I mean, there's two types of movies that I personally find uneasy, and I try to stay away from them if I can. One of them has to do with viruses or bacteria, and then the other one are possession films. And the reason for that is they're basically two things that invade your body and make you into something that you aren't or you didn't want to be. Slasher films are easy. I could watch a million of those slasher films and be just fine about it, but anything where something mutates you or makes you into a killer or a monster, it's just, I don't know. They're scary. They make me uneasy, and sometimes I try to avoid those. I got a feeling I'm gonna have to dip into some of them here, because at some point we're gonna run out of things in the 80s to watch. But the fact that this one presented us with this idea of a group of people introducing this compound or virus to folks to mutate their genetic code to make them into some life form that can survive underneath the sea, I thought it was really wild. And obviously these guys aren't going to sign up for this program once you've seen what these things end up turning into. And I know they wanted to be alien beneath the water, but it just fell a little short for me. My opinion, again, if you liked it, feel free to let me know. Hopefully you're subscribed here already. If not, maybe take a minute and do that. I know I would appreciate it. But at the end of the things, I'm Matthew Essex. This is Aging Gracefully. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great day. Stay out of the water. By the way, Jaws 50th anniversary. We're going to have to do Jaws here real soon. There's a shark that shows up at the end of this movie, if you can believe that. After they survive everything. I'm not going to give away who survives and how many people. They run into a shark when they get to the surface. Can you talk about some bad luck for a group of folks? Anyways, I'll see y'all on the other side.